Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and welcome to The Kid Stays in the Podcast, where we explore the Robert Evans axiom that memories shared serve each one differently. And as we continue our exploration of our love of films with Isaac Altman and Caden Miller, they invite their dads to join them to talk movies. And of course, I'm talking about none other than Ashley Edward Miller and myself, Mark Altman. Hey, guys.
Hello.
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 Well, we, it's interesting. I was thinking about this because today's episode, we're talking about, the 40th anniversary of the films of 1984. We just celebrated that, last year. And we just entered a new year, 2025, and, we'll be celebrating the films at some point in 1985. But I was thinking, Ashley, that was sort of a key year for us, which is applicable to this show, because it was when not completely, but our tastes evolved from the movies we loved as kids to a more mature kind of film goers, more educated film goers. And that's kind of what we see is happening with our kids, where, they grew up on Pokemon and Super Mario Brothers and all that kind of stuff. And, now they're watching, very sophisticated storytelling and embracing it. But, for us, I think, 84, obviously 82, but 84 was, sort of part of that gateway drug to, being a more educated cinephile, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think by that point, at least for me, I know you were because you're a little older than I am, but I was finally old enough that the idea of movies as a thing had finally kind of taken for me. It wasn't just about, I want to go see Star Trek, the motion picture, or The Black Hole, or a Superman movie, or I want to, go see Star Trek 2. It wasn't about that. I was genuinely excited about movies at that point, almost to the degree that when I couldn't get out to go see them, and I didn't go see them, Caden, as often as you and I go, I would read novelizations. I think it was also, that was when home video really, truly was coming into its own. So suddenly there was a whole world of being able to go to a video store and find just about anything you wanted to watch.
Yeah.
It was kind of a cool time to learn to love film.
Well, it was interesting because I could run out to a movie like, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Star Trek 3 and be, super excited, but at the same time, it was the year so like Blood Simple and The Cotton Club and Once Upon a Time in America. So it was definitely that like balance between sort of the stuff that I grew up on and loved as a kid and then sort of more, thoughtful, cerebral storytelling. And that all came together for you, Ashley, with the Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the movie that I really said, man, this is like, it's not quite Fitzcarraldo, but almost. That was a big thing for me. Honestly, two big things happened for me in 1984. The first was, I think that was the first time I kissed a girl. The second one is that I had my first movie-related FOMO, although we didn't have the word FOMO back then, kids. It hadn't been invented yet. And that was Ghostbusters. I was at camp and my friends were all talking about Ghostbusters and I hadn't seen it yet. And I was just I don't know. It wasn't really the ads that got me. It was my friends talking about it and saying, oh my God, you have to go see it, and realizing I haven't seen it.
Right. So even before social media, this fear of missing out was a real thing, and I want to ask the guys, and this is a question for Isaac and Caden. Obviously you hear us talk about, 82, and in this case it was 84. And it was sort of an interesting combination. You had seen a bunch of the movies that we talked about on the panel, but then there were a bunch that you hadn't seen that you sort of binged to prepare for the panel. And sort of what was your takeaway from this experience? And I know it's been a couple of months since we did this, so you may not remember as vividly, but just, some initial thoughts. Like, Caden, what was your take on all this 1984 obsession?
I think in terms of films that came out that year, I felt like it was really experimental with like what kind of stuff you were getting. Like, David Lynch's Dune, Terminator, etc., etc. There's a lot of great stuff there, but at the same time, it's like even the stuff that I don't think is great, I still have a lot of respect for it because they tried to do something different. That wasn't just the same formulaic film that had already been done hundreds of times.
Yeah. Well, Isaac, I'm so deeply grateful to 84 because, you'd seen things like Last Starfighter and even Once Upon a Time in America before, but had it not been for this celebration of 84, I would have never shown you Streets of Fire and Red Dawn.
Streets of Fire.
Yeah. It's like when you can go from, with this year specifically, you can go from something like Once Upon a Time in America, which is, a gangster movie. It's, it's hard art. It's very serious. And then you can go to Streets of Fire, which is one of the wildest movies ever made. And it just shows the catalog of movies to enjoy from this year and how different each one of them, all of them are.
And it shows you that tonight is what it means to be young.
And that you're going nowhere fast.
That's right. Mark, I realize this is crossing over podcasts. This is crossing the streams in Ghostbusters terms. But you mentioned The Last Starfighter, and by the way, those of you in listener land, if you haven't heard our interview with the cast of The Last Starfighter, either we haven't dropped it yet.
That's why they haven't heard.
That's why you haven't heard it. But when you hear it, you'll be amazed. I have to tell you about my Meg Wiley headcanon, which is that any movie that she appears in is actually an illusion that is projected by the Telosians.
Okay, now here's the thing. This is not a Star Trek podcast. So if you're going to make that joke, you have to tee it up and say Meg Wiley played a Telosian who created illusions in the menagerie in the cave. You can't just throw Meg Wiley out there and assume everyone knows. I mean, this ideally is actually a podcast that parents and kids are listening to, and they have no idea.
Random lady just casting spells every single film that she's in.
Even our kids have no idea what you're talking about.
Sorry, my wife yells at me about saying things my kids don't understand all the time too. So
yeah. Now if you start talking about Dabney Coleman and no, never mind. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was a great panel, and I thought you guys were terrific, which is one of the reasons that we wanted to share it on the on the podcast. And before we do, I just want to say, is there anything you want to share that I mean, Isaac, you've been catching up. You've seen a few movies since. You saw Gremlins last year, so even since the panel, you've been catching up on some of these movies, and that was something you really enjoyed, huh?
Yeah, it was interesting just, going back and, seeing a lot of these, I mean, I had seen Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones and all that, but, especially seeing Gremlins and Red Dawn and, and Starman. It was just, it was interesting to see all of those movies.
I want to ask you about Starman because of the four of us, I assume you're the only one who's ever interviewed Jeff Bridges. That's a movie that he considers very special. Did you guys talk much about Starman when you interviewed Jeff Bridges?
No, that was, I didn't see Starman until after that.
Well, then you failed.
Okay. Well, you talked about Lebowski and Tron and stuff, so you did just fine. I'm not. We can't criticize
this master
that.
control program will not stand, man.
And it's funny. I mean, it's just if you go back and we only had an hour at San Diego Comic-Con. So many things I think we didn't talk about, like Electric Dreams. Which was. We might have talked about Electric Dreams, but Company of Wolves.
We might have talked about it.
I don't think in this company we talked about Body Double. I don't know how much we talked about Amadeus because, Steve Melching wasn't on the panel. Had he been, it certainly would have been discussed. But we did talk about everything from Terminator to Oh God, You Devil. So it was a pretty great panel. I hope everyone will agree when they check it out. We always have a great time at San Diego, and looking forward to being back this summer. What was before we turn it over to ourselves and our panel? Caden, do you remember what was your favorite thing about Comic-Con this year?
It's probably SmackDown. To be completely honest, I thought that was a ton of fun. I I mean, other than that, it was just fun getting to talk to people a bunch and like, just, it felt like a learning experience. And
he's clearly your son. I really enjoyed talking to people. Yeah. It's like me and Isaac. Do we have to talk to people?
Must we interact?
I'm normally like that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It's sometimes it's just nice to talk to people.
You just have that chip that activates sometimes in a public place when you have no choice. Right. Oh, Father, why are we speaking to everyone?
And you guys can't say this, but Ashley and I can. We've been doing Starship Smackdown now for a long time. I think it's over 20, 25 years. No, it's over 20, at Comic-Con, a remarkable different group of people that have cycled through over the years. Some have no longer come to Comic-Con. Others we no longer talk to. Some have died. I don't know if anybody's died, but anyway, but there's certain people that have maintained, Ashley came in a couple of years after we started. He's never left. Obviously I was there since the beginning. And I have to say, you two were both extraordinary at the SmackDown. I just thought you brought so much. And I think you had a tough nut to crack. It was a lot to prove because we've been doing this for a long time and a lot of people have approached all of us and said, oh, how do I get on the SmackDown? We're very picky about who we add over the years. We only have the best of the best, the real experts, the real spaceshipologists. We don't just add anyone. And I think, it's rubbed people the wrong way in the past that they haven't been, able to join, or participate. But, we're very picky about that. And so I think a lot of people probably, I wouldn't have told you this before, we're probably looking to see you guys fail. It's like, how did they get on? Nepo babies. And then you came on and killed it. You both killed it. So, I'm glad because you didn't embarrass us and you didn't embarrass yourselves. So.
And for the record, it's not just us who thought that. I think that Dan Weber would definitely attest to that. And he's a cynical mofo. And if he, he would say what he thought. And I know that you guys heard from people who came up to you in Vegas who remembered you from SmackDown and said, wow.
You're those kids.
You were great. We loved you. We want to put you on a show.
Yeah. And the beauty of us, we'll do it again. So anyway, now we're very excited. Thanks to the largesse of our great sound mixer and producer, Mark Rivera, who was kind enough to come down and record this, to share the 1984, 40 years ago today, panel from Comic-Con with you. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with an all-new episode of The Kid Stays in the Podcast, where we talk about, are you ready for this? Favorite movies of all time. So that's going to be a real treat. So you don't want to miss that. But now let's take a trip in the Wayback Machine all the way to 1984 when we weren't afraid of no ghosts. You just employed a double negative. And I will see you. We'll see you at the end of the panel with a few closing thoughts. So stay tuned. Welcome. Here we are doing this yet again, celebrating another year in the history of great movie-going years. And I'm so glad. I mean, we are going to talk about, obviously I made a film about Greatest Geek Year Ever, 1982. Here we are talking about how great 1984 is. We're going to talk, there are a lot of people who think 84 is better than 82. We'll have that debate. But really, come on, Star Trek 2 versus Star Trek 3, E.T. versus Starman. Okay, we'll get to all that stuff. But we'll get there. I know, I'm terrible. We're going to talk about 1984 movies today. This has been a tradition here at Comic-Con. Dan, we were doing this. I mean, I think this is a repeat at this point. I think we did 30 years since 1984. Here we are doing 40 years since 1984. But the movies haven't changed. They're the same. Yeah. But when I say 1982 versus 84, quite frankly, I think Blade Runner was a little better than Ice Pirates. Conan the Barbarian was a lot better than Conan the Destroyer. Maybe Buckaroo Banzai is better than Megaforce, but, I'll give 84 that. So let's
Star Trek 3 is much better than Star Trek 2.
Oh, that's sarcasm.
Well, Dan,
Okay.
well, look, let's talk about that. That was a huge film in the summer of '84. People were, wondering, is Spock going to be back after dying in Star Trek II? Spoiler alert. Sorry if you didn't know that. And there was a lot of excitement and anticipation. Of course, the name of the movie was The Search for Spock. So you kind of figured out they were going to find him, but you didn't know for sure. What was your reaction to seeing Search for Spock for the first time, Dan?
I immediately wanted to go get the Burger King glass.
Taco Bell, man.
There you go. You can see how much it imprinted on my memory. That was my. I remember really liking the slugs that were all over the coffin. At that age, I think I was 13 I was 14 when it came out. So yeah,
that was your slug phase.
Yeah, those were my slugs.
That's your takeaway from Star Trek 3.
Yeah, that and Kirstie Alley was in that one still.
No, Robin Curtis.
Oh, okay. So that was. See, look at why am I here?
This is not a Star Trek. This is not a Star Trek panel.
Yeah,
we'll get to your stuff.
Okay.
But Ashley, we did a bunch of episodes of Inglorious Treksperts about Star Trek 3, and of course, for those of you who want to hear glowing praise, you want to listen to our interview with Kevin Feige, Terry Matalas, and Steve Asbell talking about how much they love Star Trek 3. You will not, I presumably, hear that right now. Ashley Miller.
Yeah. So Star Trek 3 was definitely a movie that was in theaters, and I saw it in the theater. I am pretty sure they found Spock at the end of it.
Yeah.
He had one line, though. I mean, and they gave him top billing. I don't understand that. It did have a really great scene, stealing the Enterprise. And if it had been a 15-minute movie about stealing the Enterprise, from the perspective of Captain Adventure, I would have been all in.
Isaac Altman, I got to ask you, there's all these people burying Star Trek 3 here. I'm sure as a youngster who discovered Star Trek 3 many years later, you must love that movie.
No. I mean, without it, we wouldn't have the one with the whales, and I think that's the biggest praise I can give it. Yeah, we'll go with that.
I got to ask you, Caden, because, another movie that got a lot of controversy that year, another sequel that really polarizes people, and I think we're going to have a different perspective on that, is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. The Temple of Doom. Now, this is a film at the time it came out, it was very controversial. It said, don't take your kids. It's too violent. It's a PG movie, but don't bring your kids. But I know two kids that love the Temple of Doom. What do you think?
I wouldn't say the Temple of Doom is the best Indiana Jones movie. Obviously, the first one is, but it is probably my favorite because it is just so much fun. And I have nothing but praise for that movie. It is so good. And I'm really glad that we got to watch it in at a somewhat bigger screen for the first time, because I think that really helped amplify the experience of it for me.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing, man. If you're going to go see some of these movies, I mean, we live in a wonderful age where movie theaters are starting to play these movies again on the big screen. So if you get the opportunity to go out and support that, do so, especially if you're taking your kids, because it really is a different experience than looking on a telephone, on an iPhone screen.
Movies suck a lot less when you go with your kids. That's not, all you guys know that too, but yeah.
Isaac, did anything go for you? Anything goes with you with Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom? But you're a big fan of Doom as well.
Yeah, I love Temple of Doom. Up until maybe a year ago, it was my favorite Indiana Jones movie. Then I watched Raiders, and
God, I thought you were going to say
no.
Up until a year ago when the Dial of Destiny came out.
Hey, we were about to vote Isaac off the aisle.
Yeah,
it was.
Okay, you don't want to give your father a heart attack.
Sacrifice.
Well, no. I will say this for Dial of Destiny, at least it breaks the trend of each Indiana Jones movie getting worse as the franchise progresses. But if you want to hear us talk more about Indiana Jones, go listen to our first episode of Kid Stays in the Podcast, where
That is a great
your
plug.
father's gift.
Ashley, before you say something, he worked that plug in like a true Altman.
That's what I'm saying.
That was great.
He's learned at the feet of the master.
Ashley, go ahead.
Just look. I think that Isaac is right about Dial of Destiny to a certain extent, but that's also damning with faint praise. Look, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is a great, dark, insane little movie where a dude gets his heart ripped out and somebody eats a monkey's brains. And if you're not down with that, okay, fine. But at least give Spielberg and Lucas the credit for not trying to repeat the formula that they came up with for Raiders of the Lost Ark, which they then did for the next few movies to varying degrees of success or not success. Give them credit for taking chances and just trying to do something a little bit different. And it's cool, man.
And yet, what is a better moment, a meta moment, than when Indiana Jones is on the bridge and he goes for his gun, which, pays homage to what happened in Raiders, and it's not there. It's such a great moment. And of course, it's a great moment for Steven Spielberg because he met his wife there. So
that's right. Not on the bridge, on the movie. It'd be weird if she was on the bridge.
Continuing on with the scene where Indy tries to draw his gun and it's not there. It doesn't make sense. Temple of Doom is a prequel. How often does he do this?
I mean, how many guys do you think actually come at him with a sword or something wacky like that, and he just has to shoot them? I like the idea that he professionally shoots dudes for bringing knives to a gunfight.
Well, he learned his lesson in Temple of
movies
Doom.
we like.
There you go.
He learned his lesson to always carry a gun with him, so when he reaches for one, he'll have one.
That's right. Touche.
Now, obviously, I don't believe in shameless plugs, so I don't want to continue this whole 82 versus 84. But I do want to point out 1982 Greatest Geek Year Ever will be out on Blu-ray and DVD this October from MTV Rewind Collection. So if you didn't see it on the CW, you should check it out. It's the full uncut version. And speaking of 82 versus 84, here's some other matchups as we try and decide what is the Greatest Geek Year Ever. Well, in 82, this is a tough one because you had Richard Pryor live on the Sunset Strip, and then you had Stop Making Sense come out in 84. So that's pretty much a draw. Those are both great movies. Now, if you want something that's not a draw, how about The Beastmaster from 82 versus Sheena in 84? Now, that's the Tanya Roberts cage match.
My man, that is a more difficult choice than you really kind of make it out to be. Because on one hand, it's Tanya Roberts and Sheena. On the other hand, Beastmaster's got ferrets, so that's cool.
Grease 2 versus Purple Rain. I'll give this one to Prince.
Yeah.
Isaac, I got to ask you, here's the Eddie Murphy square off. Is 48 Hours in 82 versus Beverly Hills Cop in 84. That's a tough one. So I'm looking at you, Mrs. Robinson. What do you think?
I don't know. They're both really great and really funny movies. I don't know. I keep thinking 48 Hours, and then I think of Beverly Hills.
48 Hours had Denise Crosby. Beverly Hills Cop had Judge Reinhold. It's tough. It's a tough one. Dan Vever, you're the king of comedy. Tell us, what do you think?
Which one had Jamie Lee Curtis?
That was Trading Places in 83. Ashley, what do you think? Come on, 48 Hours.
Two totally different films. 48 Hours isn't a comedy. We just think about it that way because when Eddie Murphy walks into that honky-tonk bar and goes ham on everybody, it is amazingly funny, and that was his introduction to the world, and it's just, other than Saturday Night Live, but it is just terrific. Beverly Hills Cop is primarily a comedy, so they're kind of apples and oranges. It depends on what I'm in the mood for. If I want to see dudes get punched in the face and shot, and I want it to be nice and violent and Walter Hilly, then I'm going to watch 48 Hours. But if I want, somebody stealing robes from a hotel, then I'm going to watch Beverly Hills Cop.
Okay, Caden, I'm going to give you an easy one. Ready? This is 82 versus 84. John Carpenter's The Thing versus 84's Chud.
That's a softball.
That's a layup, baby. What do you
Can I say
think?
the Terminator?
Yeah, but I'm trying to make the case for 82. You say the Terminator, and that weighs everything back to 84. But so Blade Runner versus the Terminator. One has replicants, one has... That's a tough one.
See, now I don't know what to say.
Aha!
I'm in a predicament. I think they're both very different. I think they're hard to compare. I like to consider, we watched Terminator very recently. I think I would consider Terminator to be the gold standard of what a movie is. just in general. It's got a great script. It's got great music. It's got great action. Everyone acts really well in it. It is just overall, in almost every single category you can think of, a great movie. I don't think it is the best movie in every single one of those, but it is great. And then Blade Runner is just amazing. It's Blade Runner. Like, that's... Yeah. I think... Honestly, I think I like the Terminator more.
Dan, you're nodding along.
Well, here's a question: which Blade Runner or Terminator? Which was more influential ultimately?
That's that.
Ask Chat GPT.
Well, I would not be sitting here right now or existing in general if the Terminator didn't happen. So yeah,
true,
so I honestly would say the Terminator.
How I wooed my
Without
wife.
getting into the gory details, tell us why, Caden. Why is that?
If it weren't for the Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles would never have been made, and so I probably would. And so
We would not have been able to afford him.
yeah.
So, guess what, honey? I got a job. It's the Terminator. And there he was, 9 months later.
Dan, you were nodding along. A Terminator, Blade Runner. That's a Sophie's Choice. Another 1982 movie, by the way. Yeah.
Sophie's Choice versus Chud. Which one?
You know, it's action versus brilliance.
Yeah.
And it's hard to choose between the two because they're both very, very perfect.
And both, to answer your question, extremely influential. How many direct-to-video movies ripped off the Terminator? In the next 30 years, like everything was, they've come back from the future and we have to stop because it's cheap to make it contemporary. 5 minutes of special effects, and then it's people running around downtown Los Angeles. Then Isaac, Blade Runner has had this incredible impact on science fiction movies ever since '82 as well. So I don't know, what's the answer to Dan's question, his query?
I don't know. I mean, both are, as you have been saying, both are very, are amazing movies. They're very nearly perfect, and I just don't know which one is better.
Okay.
That was the question, right?
Okay, Linda Hamilton versus Sean Young. No, but I got to ask you.
In a fist fight or?
Ashley, so here's a question. This is my last 82 versus 84 question. So 82, talking about espionage now. Espionage, You had Firefox. Right? You had the Firefox, Clint Eastwood, steals a plane, thinking Russian. Really good movie. In 84, you had Cloak and Dagger with the late Dabney Coleman. Explain.
Yeah. Now, look, if you listen to the 430 movie podcast at all, you'll know that I inexplicably and repeatedly bring up Cloak and Dagger as my pick for Wednesdays. Why? Because when I was a kid, by God, man, I could watch that movie over and over and over again. The whole movie. It's not good. It's not. But I loved it anyway. Like my children, they're not good, but I love them anyway. But Firefox, on the other hand, if you can make it through the first 90 minutes or so, man, that last half hour, like that dogfight chase is the bomb. Like, I loved that. I tried to build my own Firefox model, and then somebody stole it, which really pissed me off. But it was.
I built one, but nobody could see it.
Yeah, there you go.
It takes him an unusually long time to remember that he needs to think in Russian.
It really does.
He's kind of a dope.
It's like, he's a Ruski, but he's or something.
Nobody remembers Firefox. Okay, I want to ask you, because there are a lot of movies in 84 that are these cult classics. We saw one of them right there, Buckaroo Banzai, which we adore. At least I can, speaking for myself, I know you love Buckaroo Banzai. What are some of the other films that, if you Googled 84, we know it would say Star Trek 3, and it would say Temple of Doom, and, probably say Police Academy. There are a couple of these films. But what are some of the ones under the radar that people don't talk about that we're going to talk about right now, Isaac Altman?
Well, the movie that the latest 1984 movie that I recently watched, which was great. It was rad. Would be Streets of Fire.
Oh, I thought it was actually rad.
And Now, I wasn't around back then, but in those ancient times, but it felt...
In the before time is what we call it.
It felt very 80s, I think. Is that the correct term?
I'm not talking to you, so it doesn't.
Okay, you've missed some pretty big ones here.
Yep.
We have 2010.
No, you're looking at your phone. Come on, we're supposed to be the experts.
You said Google 1984.
I meant it figuratively. Go ahead.
The year we make no.
Okay, no, we're not going to do a list. Now we're doing a countdown.
Fantastic. I want a Brother from Another Planet. You want to talk about cult classics?
John Sayles, great movie.
That's fantastic. Brother from Another Planet.
Okay, calm down. Let me give Caden and Ashley a chance before you,
Rob, I don't
you go
think they had-
AI this whole path.
We got Threads from Britain.
Yeah.
Arguably best nuclear war movie ever made.
Yeah, I know. So Threads versus Day After. A lot of people prefer Threads.
Yeah.
A lot more intense.
It's much better.
But, okay. Caden, what about you? What's the movie we're missing that we're not Googling?
Okay. The movie we're missing that we're not Googling. I mean, there's probably more than one.
Of course there is. But do you have something in mind that you love from 84 that we haven't talked about? That you're like, this is the movie that I'm so glad I saw that's so under the radar. Not like Firefox, like under the radar.
Man. Under the radar.
Under the radar.
Well, I know, can I hum it? Because I think this is one. Dun, dun. No, I was just going to do the right stuff. Can someone hum the theme from The Last Starfighter?
Oh, yeah.
I always get it confused with the right stuff.
That was the last Starfighter.
Yeah. It was the last one.
Like The Last Starfighter is a movie, at the very beginning. A lot of people, don't embrace it because it's very early in the CGI era. They have problems with it, but it's such a great premise and it's such an entertaining movie. And I know you're a fan, so tell us a little bit about Last Starfighter.
Yeah, The Last Starfighter, I'd say it's almost like the first of its kind in a way of like these really cult classic movies that you don't really expect to be like super great, but they end up being like pretty brilliant. I thought it was just really smartly put together with how with the setup for it and how I do like most of the time I don't like it when movies spend too much time setting up for what is like the actual main part of the film. Dune.
Wow. Sarcasm, where'd you get that from?
And then but yeah, I think it taking its time is actually a good thing because it helps us understand who the characters are and why we should like them. And it does it very effectively. And it all culminates in just an overall fun action scene that kind of makes you forget about like how not great the visual effects are.
Can I boil that down to 2 words? Death Blossom.
See, that's the theme. That's not the right stuff. That's The Last Starfighter.
You've been recruited to fight Zur and the CADEN
Take a
Armada.
moment to enjoy
Defend
the
this frontier from Zur.
dulcet strains of Craig Saffin. This is how great Comic-Con. One of the when he put on The Last Starfighter, he hadn't checked out. He's not looking at his phone. He's like, we mentioned Last Starfighter. Cue Last Starfighter. You gotta love that. Thank you so much. Ashley?
Yeah, look, as far as The Last Starfighter goes and its influence, I think literally maybe 80% of male writers in Hollywood have some idea for a reboot, remake, sequel, prequel, something. They don't care as long as, there's a CADEN Armada and they get to type the words Death Blossom, everything is good. I may be one of them. Because look, it's just sometimes movies exceeds their grasp, and sometimes they live on anyway. And I think there was just something about The Last Starfighter that was very appealing because it was about it's just some kid who playing video games turns out to be a useful life skill.
That's what people relate to.
Yeah, it's like that's the dream. No, Mom, it's cool. I'm going to be a starfighter.
It's so funny you say writers, all these writers have this idea. I was literally at my chiropractor's and he said to me, well, I know you're in the business. You know what they should remake? I said, no, what should they remake, Dr. Dan? He goes, That one where he wins the video game and they take him to space and he fights the aliens. That's what you should do. And I'm like, well, the guy who wrote it owns the rights. They've been talking about this for years. It's been tied up in IP hell. Universal wanted to do it as a sequel or a reboot and a TV series, and it's just never come together. But there've been rumors in the last couple of years that it may finally happen because it's such a wonderful premise that, like you said, who doesn't want to believe that all these years of wasting time playing video games will pay off because you'll become the most important person in the galaxy. So anyway, Dan Weber, now you could Google. What's the movie we missed?
I want to talk about 2010 because that movie gets crapped on a lot. And because it's compared to the first movie, to 2001, which is just, it's an unfair comparison. It's like, I happen to believe, like, for example, Godfather 3 is a great movie. It's not the first two, but it's great. 2010 is a great movie. It's not 2001, but it's great. I mean, you can't argue the scene where Bob Balaban is saying goodbye to Hal at the end, because Hal is willing to sacrifice himself at the end of the day, brings me to tears. Every single time I've seen that movie, that brings me to tears. It's fantastic. John Lithgow's fantastic in it. The air braking sequence is I would argue, one of the best sci-fi action sequences ever. And he has dolphins living in his house. Richard Dreyfuss. So there.
Hard agree. By the way, he has the dolphins living in his house.
Right,
Yeah,
you know what
you meant. Yeah, it was like you had like Jaws on your mind.
I had Jaws on my mind.
By the way, I would like everybody here to try to say Bob Balaban saying goodbye 3 times fast.
Yeah.
I think that's such a great pick. I mean, it's so interesting too, because, Peter Hyams was the DP, the director, the writer, because they were rushing it out for the anniversary. And you thought this is going to be a total train wreck. And to its credit, it's not a train wreck. It's not Kubrick, but it's really entertaining. And which is, you'd never think a sequel to 2001 would be entertaining, but it is. And, it's such an interesting thing because Peter Hyams is not a director that we vet very often, but if you look at his filmography, Capricorn 1, Outland, he just made great
Time Cop.
What?
Time Cop.
The Star Chamber. It's just like he's a guy that totally gets overlooked too, but he's done so much great genre, and it's a shame that he doesn't get more love. Yeah, Isaac.
What do you mean Time Cop meh? It's great.
Not a big Time Cop fan. I like the first 20 minutes and then it gets dopey. Okay. So other movies that overlooked, I can't believe that none of you said, well, first you said Godfather 3, which is interesting. Not that year, obviously, but there are 2 great gangster movies in '84, which is Once Upon a Time in America, which is great. And also in all its versions except the short version. And the best thing about Once Upon a Time in America is when it was destroyed by the Ladd Company and released in its abbreviated form, it was Siskel and Ebert, who were the great film critics at the time, both put it on their 10 worst list. And then when the director's cut was released, the full version or almost full version, they put it the same year on their 10 best list. It's the only time the same film was on the worst list and the best list. So it's a really extraordinary film in so many ways. Sergio Leone's last film. Also, another troubled gangster film that came out that year was The Cotton Club, which Coppola just put out a new version about a year or 2 ago, which is also a flawed film, but a very good film in so many ways. But I'm shocked that none of you, given how much Russia is in the news, have mentioned Red Dawn.
Well, I knew,
Also, Wolverine is in the news.
Yeah, I knew we were getting to that because it's on the thing.
Yeah.
It's on your Google.
It's on my Google. No, maybe it was just in the text you sent me when you asked me to.
Are you not a Wolverine fan?
Oh, God, Red Dawn was incredibly influential for me. Yeah. Before I realized that it was like, horrifyingly conservative and right wing. When I was a kid, I just thought it was fun. And when I was a kid, I totally bought into the idea that Russia could team up with Cuba and take over the United States.
See, I told Isaac that after Logan, he said, it's too bad there are no more Wolverine movies. I said, no, there's one more. Yeah. We watched Red Dawn. Tell us, what was your reaction as someone who didn't live through the Cold War to watching Red Dawn?
Well, it's very interesting. It's got a lot of interesting ideas and interesting concepts, not entirely executed well, but it's just thinking that a bunch of teenagers can take on the entire Russian military speaks to me. So
It spoke to a lot of us, Isaac.
yeah.
That's really funny.
And was Red Dawn the first PG-13 movie?
No.
Yes, it was.
Wait, is the first?
It was the first PG-13 movie because Temple of Doom and Gremlins led to the rating being created.
Yep. Okay.
And boy, that happened quickly because Gremlins and Temple of Doom were 84.
Yep.
Red Dawn was 84. So people didn't mess around back then. It was like, oh my God, the kids are being destroyed by these movies.
We need to add a number to it.
Rating out. And it was Red Dawn, which only encouraged you to want to see it. It's like, oh, PG-13, I got to go see this. So,
It's like a marketing ploy.
yeah, but
Well,
there's a new 4K of it, and it looks really good. The reds are redder.
and the dawns are dawnier.
There we go.
There we go.
Love this guy.
It's good stuff. But yeah, at the time I didn't know John Milius was a lunatic either. But it's great.
It's fantastic, the idea that when they land, the first thing they do is shoot a high school teacher.
Well,
Really? That's necessary? Okay.
Yeah. Well, at the time it felt,
At the time, totally real.
it felt like the right thing to do.
it's like I see these paratroopers landing in front of the school. I'm going to go talk to them and see what they want. It's
Yeah.
like it's a cautionary tale. If you see paratroopers dropping in front of your school, do not go out and talk to them.
Next time I'm at school, I'll make sure I look out the window to make sure the Russians aren't invading.
So, Caden, wax on, wax off. Karate Kid, another 84 film that people love, and it spawned a franchise, and now a Cobra Kai. I mean, it's the gift that keeps on giving. What do you think Karate Kid stands in the 84 pantheon?
I think Karate Kid it's a good movie. I think it's not, I don't actually think it's great. I think it has a lot of flaws. I honestly kind of like the second one more.
Okay.
But I think it has just had a big influence on, well, it's been so many sequels, TV series, and so many. And I think it's undeniably a very influential film for just a martial arts genre film. And I think it does a good job of like, hold on.
See, you're so fun. What's so funny, Caden, is you're like a black belt. So you're like, it's not entirely accurate, the Karate Kid. I can tell you from experience, from being a martial artist who could kick his butt, that he's not a very, so it's interesting you have that perspective. But see, when we watch a sports movie, we have no knowledge of sports, so we can really enjoy the natural.
Yeah. It's a little difficult to get your black belt in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
The jump front kick just isn't that great. It's just not. Also, you're not supposed to kick somebody in the face if they're not wearing headgear. So, Johnny's right in Cobra Kai when he says that was an illegal kick. It totally is. But you know what? Johnny had it coming.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. See, that you bump on, but Spock becoming Leonard Nimoy on the Genesis planet, that's really cool. That I get. No? Okay.
I think it should have been David Gattro.
Oh, look, the Karate Kid is playing. This is awesome.
By the way, I do love this movie. And it's John Avildsen directed this movie, and it's just it plays like what it's Rocky for the teenager set.
It's Rocky for the teenage set. Okay, I like that.
All Daniel has to do is go the distance, or he's just going to be another bum from Jersey who moved to Encino with his mom and met a Japanese guy, and he did a lot of free work over the summer.
Yeah. Well. And of course, it gave us many more 80s songs that became very popular at the time. MTV was hugely popular. Obviously the big films of the 82 really started using the music of the era, but it continues in 84.
Mark, I'm looking at the clock. We're going to need at least 20 minutes for Dune. So,
we'll get to Dune. Don't you worry. I want to ask Isaac first because you recently interviewed Jeff Bridges. What is your feeling about Starman?
I really enjoyed Starman. I thought it was fun. I see a lot of the similarities with E.T., but I enjoy the film. It's quaint.
Especially the scene where E.T. and Elliot totally did it.
Well, that's the crazy thing that Columbia Pictures said, oh, we don't want to make E.T., we got Starman. So they gave Universal the rights to E.T., because they were going to make Starman, but they kept a small percentage of the gross, and they ended up making more money off of E.T., a movie they passed on, than any other movie they produced that year. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. It sounds like something that would happen today.
Starman's great, by the way. Totally great film.
But
it's not greater than E.T., but it's a great film.
Yes, Isaac, you wanted to say, oh, there we are. It's E.T. from 82.
Or is it Starman?
Did I mention
don't know.
that the greatest Geek Year Ever, 1982, is coming out on Blu-ray and DVD in October? And if you don't want to spend the money, it's still on CW app if you want to watch the TV version, but that's edited. Just saying. Okay. Good. That's good. I promised the panel I wasn't going to discuss Supergirl, but I swore that I would not bring it up, so I won't. No, we're not going to mention Supergirl. We're not going to mention Helen Slater. We're not going to mention Faye Dunaway. We're not going to mention. Well, this is so funny. We interviewed Ilya Salkind recently about Santa Claus the movie for a project I can't talk about. But Supergirl did come up, and he said, "Oh, I don't understand why that didn't do well. It was such a great movie." And to keep from laughing, it was like, really? I mean, he's like, but you want to say, yeah, you're right. But in that case, I could not say that. I could just say, okay, yeah, okay. Police Academy was a huge film that year. Dan, was that something that you liked at the time?
No. I don't know if I've ever seen Police Academy.
Really?
Yeah.
That stuns me.
No. But what I have seen is Night of the Comet.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Catherine Mary Stewart, star of Last Starfighter, also had Night of the Comet with Robert Beltran.
Yes. Which postulated that if you were inside a movie theater, you would not be affected by the cosmic zombie rays. But so only teenagers who were at the malls survived.
Yeah, and they survived. They survived the Night of the Comet when everyone else was turned into zombies. Yeah. And Night of the Comet is a delightful, this is the kind of B movie that they don't make anymore, it was like, and it's not a particularly expensive movie, but it's so much fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dan, what about you, Ashley? You had another movie that you really feel like that you want to make sure before we get to Dune that you feel like maybe people might have missed, that might have been off their radar, that they should check out?
Jesus, off the radar. Oh, yeah, holy crap. What is that? It's the intruder. It took us 6 weeks to wipe the smile off his face. A top secret.
Yes.
Val Kilmer is basically playing Elvis, which is so weird, but not weird at the same time, because then he really does play Elvis in True Romance. So, the world just sort of turns.
Yeah. What about you, Kate? You've been sort of binging 84 movies lately. Is there something that we missed that you think, oh, I really like this, and maybe people don't appreciate it?
Wouldn't appreciate, that's the
or just in something you love that we haven't mentioned.
Oh yeah, we have not mentioned Ghostbusters somehow.
How do we not mention that? We ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Yeah. I think, I mean, obviously we are, because we haven't brought it up yet.
That's true.
Yeah, Ghostbusters is great. I mean, I don't have too much to say about it other than it's great.
Hugely popular.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't know this, but marketing-wise, it was like Batman '89 back then. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing the Ray Parker Jr. song or seeing that symbol with the ghosts on T-shirts and things like that. I mean, that was ever-present, ubiquitous, I might say.
Yeah.
Isaac, what about you? Is there an 84 movie that we missed or just something you really love? I mean, I know The Natural was certainly something you loved.
Yeah, it's like, we're the nerds at Comic-Con who wants to talk about sports. But I really enjoyed The Natural. I don't know anything about baseball, so I wasn't worried about if it was accurate. I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was a Robert Redford baseball movie, and I liked it.
it's one of my favorite sports movies. I mean, people always talk about Field of Dreams, deservedly so, but man, I love The Natural. And it's just such a great movie. You know, we talked about PG-13, another benchmark, the first time a Disney movie had nudity, Splash.
Yeah. And then they come out for Disney Plus. Oh, you know what we haven't mentioned before we go on? And I think we should, because good Lord, it spawned a lot of sequels, remakes, crossovers, a television show, and, you know, Robert Englund is just lovely. A Nightmare on Elm Street.
That was 84?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I know, obviously, one of the big films of that year, there's a wonderful new book from Max Avery out called Masterpiece in Disarray, which is all about the making of Dune. If you don't have it, you should get it. It's really, I didn't write it, so if I'm promoting it, I must really like it. It's called A Masterpiece in Disarray, about the making of David Lynch's Dune. And it's a very polarizing film. A lot of people love it, a lot of people don't. So I just want to ask everybody their opinions of Dune. Dan, you were anxious to talk about it.
You may remember that the day of my wedding, we literally sat and watched Dune. Me and the rest of my wedding party. That was how we killed time while we were waiting around for it.
I do remember it.
Dune was a very, very influential and important movie to me.
Well, because it was a very delicate time.
I freaking love Lynch's Dune, and I do not like the idea of like which one's better, because this is one of these things where you can say, you know what, both of them are really good, and they're really good for different reasons. But David Lynch's Dune, man, if you want to talk about a movie I can just watch anytime I can see it on the TV and sit down and watch the whole thing, that would be probably at the top of the list.
Ashley, when you were getting ready to get married, were you watching Dune?
No, I was talking to girls. I was drunk most of that day. Also, now that I think about it, I might not have been legally competent to say I do. Now that I think about it, we got to have a talk after this. No, look, the theatrical cut of Dune is, structurally speaking, a disaster. The Spice Diver cut is much, 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 much better. Mm-hmm. But I think what really stands out, and we just watched this, I'm going to let CADEN kind of, take us down, kind of his breakdown of this film. But what jumped out at me, rewatching it extremely recently, was how beautiful some of the effects were and the designs were, how specific they were, what an epic feel David Lynch got. And he did all of it without CG. He did it with real people, with extras. He did all kinds of crazy things to pull this off. I mean, the movie opens, with like Miguel Ferrer having a conversation with a creature with a vagina for a face. Mm-hmm. And what doesn't say wedding?
That also sounds like my wedding night, I was going to say.
So, it should be.
Well, and how cool is it that Alicia Witt, is now the mom in Longlegs?
Right.
She's making her comeback in one of the hottest new movies of the summer.
And she is, by the way, just an awesome, awesome human being. And it took me a long time to figure this out. Now, obviously, you can tell, just if you have ears, that she was dubbed, and that was so weird. But she was the creepiest looking little girl in the history of creepy little girls. Mm-hmm. She's no longer creepy. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, I got to ask the kid stays in the podcast. Before I do that, you mentioned the Spice Diver cut. I just want to point out, because not all of you are familiar with what that is. So a fan, I think in Germany, took it upon himself, or herself, we don't know, to create a version of Dune which includes the deleted footage from the David Lynch work print and then some other deleted scenes, and did what is now, in many people's minds, considered the definitive version. I think you can find it on YouTube. It's also on the German Blu-ray, the Spice Diver cut, I believe. So that is considered by many people the definitive version of Dune 84, but it's not an official version. It's not David Lynch's version, but it is a pastiche of different versions. It's kind of like the Phantom Edit was 20 years ago, but better because, the Phantom Edit only had the Phantom Menace to work with. Okay, go ahead, guys. What do you think of Dune?
So I'm going to bring a bit of a different opinion to this. I don't think this movie is very good. I do respect what it did visually, but other than that, I think it is kind of just a mess that spends over half of the film is spent setting up the characters until we get to the big scene where, until Paul's dad is killed, and then from that point on, it just becomes a rush to get to the third act, and the third act is also rushed, and so nobody who is introduced in the third act has a real character. They're just actors reading lines. I wouldn't even say that there's nothing happening there, and so it for whatever reason decides to take its time, set up, and then after it's done doing that, it realizes, oh, there's only an hour left to do what's probably worth over the entirety of the recent Dune 2.
And then maybe a little bit more. I mean, just by the way, and I think this is a question to you and also to Isaac when he weighs in. Poor Dan. So you guys come to this with a different perspective, right? So we saw the 84 Dune, and that was all we had. It's all we knew. We had the 84 Dune, and we saw various and sundry different versions of it. And so I will agree with you about your take on the characterizations, right? Especially considering, and this maybe I should, again, frame it more as a question. You guys come to it from having watched the Villeneuve movies, which were much more interested in who the characters were, which were paced very differently and laid out very differently. So do you think that impacted how you viewed Dune 1984? Not even they're like one is better than the other, but just that, do you think that had an effect on your expectations?
Oh yeah, it definitely did. I also read the book as well, which had an expectation. And I think 84 kind of misses the point of what those characters are.
Your head is going to explode, isn't it, Dan?
I weep for the future.
And it basically, it's the Spark Notes version of Dune, in my opinion, where it's just very simplified down, and even though it didn't really have to be.
Can I just say one thing, though, in rebuttal? Patrick Stewart as Gurney running into battle holding a tiny dog.
Is awesome. Hard agree, Dan.
I agree. That was probably the best part of that movie.
Captain Pogard.
Isaac, what about you? Where are you on the Dune of it all?
Well, with me, I saw the first half of Dune 84 before I saw any of the reboot Dune, so it didn't really impact my view. I first saw the first half of Dune 84, I think in 2020. Yeah, in 2020. And I was very confused and I was very tired, so we turned on Hot Fuzz instead. So I haven't actually seen the movie the entire way through, but it didn't really affect my viewpoint.
That's because we didn't give you the piece of paper that explained everything.
Yeah.
Because when you went to a theater in 84, they gave out a glossary of terms. And then Siskel and Ebert went on and said, this movie, it's impossible to understand. It makes no sense. If you paid attention, it totally made sense. It's not that hard to understand Dune.
My go-to opinion of Dune was I always tell people, it's a terrible movie the first 12 times you watch it. But that 13th time,
magic happens. You know what's funny about that, though, is that movie goes out of its way at the top to try to lay out everything. And if you know what you're watching, it makes sense. But there's so much data that is presented to you as a viewer that you can't really, I don't think you can grab onto it easily. And I don't think that it lets you grab onto who the characters are, to Caden's point. And it feels like somebody just sort of gave the note that said, well, everybody needs to get it and understand exactly what's going on here. And by hitting us with everything, they hit us with nothing.
But how many times have you yelled at the dentist's office, remember the tooth? And maybe it's just me.
You know, even Princess Irulan, when she's giving the data at the beginning of that movie.
I forgot to tell you.
I forgot. Fades out and then says, oh, wait, I forgot to tell you. Like, even she's baffled by what's going on.
Also, by the way, in Dune 84's favor, Virginia Madsen.
Yeah.
So there you go, people.
Well, we're almost out of time, but there were so many movies we didn't talk about. Against All Odds, another Jeff Bridges movie with Rachel Ward. 1984 came out in 1984. Go figure. Terrific Michael Radford movie with John Hurt as Winston Smith. It's great if you haven't seen it. Runaway with Gene Simmons and Kirstie
I kind of
Alley.
love that movie. Not gonna lie.
A movie they would never make today, Blame It on Rio, with Michael Caine sleeping with his best friend's teenage daughter. Trancers with Tim Thomerson with Charlie Band. Pope of Greenwich Village, which with Eric Roberts, which Repo Man, the great Repo Man, Alex Cox Repo Man. Woody Allen's Broadway Danny Rose, which is one of his great mid-level movies.
Can we ask Gen Z what they thought of Children of the Corn?
Oh, yeah, Children of the Corn, sure. So what did we miss? What else did we miss? We talked about Gremlins. Oh, Iceman with Timothy Hutton.
That was the first
How did we
X-Men
not talk
movie,
about Tap? Jesus. Every convention we guess at, we get lost behind the stage and we're always, hello, Cleveland. But it doesn't matter where we are. It's always hello, Cleveland. So quick on Spinal Tap.
Great.
Didn't get a chance to watch it because we couldn't find it.
I can't
not
believe
available.
it.
Yeah.
These guys, they're like, it's not available on streaming. We literally
But
have
he
it on
did see the
Laserdisc,
video for Big
DVD, Blu-ray, and I think VHS. How do you not have it?
It was not there, and we would have had to go to the attic and hunt through DVDs to find it. But he did watch the video for Big Bottoms and for Bitch School.
But he's been denied the joys of Stonehenge. Dan, what about you? Are you a Spinal Tap fan?
Oh, Spinal Tap's fantastic. Yes. And you know, there's a new version of it coming out.
Yeah, I know. Rob Reiner's doing a new
Yeah.
movie.
Does this one go to 11?
Not a reboot, but I think it's like what are they doing now sort of situation.
Yeah, which is crazy. And like Paul McCartney's in it. They got like amazing people in it.
Yeah.
Because they did a terrible TV movie, like Return of Tap or something, which is awful and unwatchable. What else did we miss? Iceman was good. Spinal Tap. I'm so glad you brought that up. Electric Dreams. Electric Dreams. Yeah, the computer gets sentience.
That he wrote for her, but I'm not going to sing it here.
And that's Princess Cerulean.
Yeah.
Because that's Virginia Madsen. She has to decide between
Her name
Lenny
is
Van Dolen and the computer. And it's amazing she didn't pick the computer over Lenny Van Dolen.
And the computer loves Madeline to bits.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Neverending Story with Noah Hathaway.
That's a line
Boxing.
in the goddamn.
Yeah, everybody loves the Neverending Story. Wolfgang Peterson, may he rest in peace. So all great stuff. I hope you guys, if you enjoyed this panel, will check out the Kids Stay in the podcast. It's great. Of course, you all know Inglorious Trexperts, the 4:30 movie. And Dan, you're going to be at a Simpsons panel, Starship Smackdown.
The Simpsons
Sunday
still
night.
on. We're still making new Simpsons.
Woo! Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all.
And we're back. That was 1984. Boy, that 1984 went by a lot quicker than the actual year did, didn't it?
Super fast.
Yeah. We're in 2025 now. How do you feel about that, Cade? You excited about the new year?
I think so. It's ridiculous to me that it's 2025 right now. But I mean, I'm excited. There's obviously going to be a lot of movies coming out this year, so I'm excited to see some more of those. Maybe
tell us what. That's actually a great segue.
I mean, I don't know what's I don't really know what's coming out this year. Honestly.
Well, I know who does. Isaac Altman. What are you looking forward to this year?
Well, at the top of my list is Superman. I've been excited for that for a while, and I was very pleased when the trailer came out. And then I'm also excited for Fantastic Four, the Running Man remake, which, from what I've heard, it seems to be good. So I'm hoping that'll.
Your sources have reported back to you. Okay.
Yeah, my spies in the studio. He's
not kidding. He has spies in the studio.
He has spies. Okay. He hired them.
Yeah, it's a global network.
By the way, conservatively, how many times did you watch that Superman trailer?
That is on a need-to-know basis.
It's a good thing you had off from school these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, now I'm back.
Now you're back. Yeah.
Yay.
Okay.
From outer space.
Okay, well, guys, that was the Kids Days in the podcast. It was 1982, 40 years ago. We shared some of our favorite, maybe a few of our least favorite movies, and we had a great time at Comic-Con. And if you haven't been there, check out comiccon.org, where you can look into being part of the epic adventures of the San Diego Comic-Con. Also, WonderCon's coming up. We won't be at WonderCon this year, but we will be at Comic-Con, and we hope to see you there, and we hope we'll be able to bring you another panel from Caden and Isaac, and maybe Ashley and me will be there too. Who knows?
Maybe.
It's possible. They could do SmackDown without us. I've been threatening to retire for a long time, but I know it's good to know that the SmackDown will be in good hands.
That's right.
Okay. But we'll be back. We really will. I know we threatened this in the past to get on a regular schedule, but we're going to be back in 2 weeks. So check out the Kids Days in the podcast and follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a single episode, because you never know when these episodes are going to drop. And until then, on behalf of Caden, Isaac, Ashley, myself, Mark A. Altman, do we have an outro yet?
We don't, but I was afraid you were about to say keep on trucking.
I was going to say that. Stay in the picture. Just,
I think
the aisle seat.
Keep kids staying in the podcasting.
at this point, our outro is talking about what our outro is going to be.
Oh,
that's actually kind of true. Although I do like Save Us the Aisle Seats and just ripping that off boldly.
Save Us the Aisle Seats. That's from Siskel and Ebert. You know that.
Yeah, exactly.
Isaac got into Siskel and Ebert. After we watched a movie, he would always go back and watch the Siskel and Ebert review on YouTube. So anyway, okay. So on behalf of Caden, Isaac, Ashley, and me, Mark, Save Us the Aisle Seats. We'll see you at the movies. See you in 2 weeks.